You know what I told my sister last week? My daughter-in-law said it the way she said most things. Standing at the counter, not looking at me, her phone face up beside the yogurt bowl. That you'll probably just be here until you can't be anywhere else. She smiled. Small, settled, the smile of someone who'd already made her decision and stopped thinking about it. She said at least the room would still be here when that happens. My son was upstairs. The shower was running. I could hear the pipes in the old walls. I wrapped both hands around my mug. The tea was still warm, but I wasn't tasting it anymore. I looked at the window above the sink, the one I used to stand at every morning for 31 years, watching the yard go from frost to green and back again. I said nothing. She rinsed her bowl, set it in the rack, and walked out. I am 67 years old. I have lived in this house for 22 months, in a room that used to be the craft room. The one my daughter-in-law cleared when I arrived by moving her fabric bins and wrapping paper rolls to the garage. The room smells like dried glue and lavender sachets that were never quite hers. There is a twin bed, a dresser with a loose bottom drawer, and a narrow window that faces the neighbor's stockade fence. The closet holds my clothes and 3 bins of seasonal decorations that were never relocated. There is no lock on the door. I sat for a long time after she left. Long enough for the tea to go cold. Long enough to make a decision I had been edging toward for months without admitting it. This was my husband's house first, then ours for 3 decades, then just mine for 3 years after he passed. My son sat across from me at this same kitchen table 14 months after the funeral and said the words he had been building toward since the reading of the will. "Mom, you can't manage this alone. You know that. You'll worry. We'll worry. Come live with us. It'll be easier." I believed him. That's the thing I return to when I'm trying to be fair to myself. I believed him not because I was naive, but because when someone who is supposed to love you says something reasonable, you let yourself believe it. I signed the deed over. They paid me a number that was below market value, but I told myself that wasn't the point. The point was not being alone in a house where every room held an outline of someone gone. The point was family. That's what I told myself. What I hadn't told anyone, not my son, not the women from my old library staff who still called on my birthday, not the one friend left from my years in the school system, was what else my husband had left behind. He had a building, a single-story commercial space on the far edge of downtown, rented to the same dry cleaner for 17 years. He'd bought it in 1998 as a quiet investment, the kind that runs itself and becomes invisible. When he died, it went through a separate probate process. The building was in its own LLC, titled under his business name, and it took nearly 10 months for the paperwork to clear. By the time it did, my son and daughter-in-law had already begun discussing what to do with the house. I sold the building. My attorney, a woman named only by her office and her handshake, someone I had known through 20 years of library legal aid clinics, handled it without announcement. The sale closed for $308,000. I deposited the full check into a digital bank account I opened under my maiden name, the name on my original Social Security card, the name that appears nowhere in my son's household, in no shared accounts, on no family email chain. I told my son the building had barely covered its own legal costs. He nodded and changed the subject to renovations. I want to be clear that I am not a dishonest person. I let them believe what they had already decided to believe, because I had watched how they looked at me in those months after the funeral. Not with grief exactly, but with something more like calculation. A quiet tallying of what was mine and how it might simplify the years ahead for them. So I opened the account. I said nothing. And for 4 years, I said nothing, while the balance grew the slow, patient way that money grows when no one is touching it. The thing that finally moved me was small. They always are. I was looking for a pen in the kitchen junk drawer, the one with the rubber bands and the takeout menus and the dead batteries no one ever throws out, and I found a utility bill with my name on it. Not my son's name. Not a joint account. My full legal name listed as sole account holder for the gas line, because my daughter-in-law had called after a billing dispute and, apparently, found it simpler to use my name and my Social Security number. My credit score was cleaner. She had never mentioned it. I folded the bill and put it in my cardigan pocket. I went back to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and held it. This was not the first thing. The first thing had been the plane tickets. The family trip to the mountains the previous autumn, the one where my daughter-in-law said the rental only had 3 beds and there wasn't room, and I'd found out 3 weeks later that they'd taken a 2-bedroom suite. The first thing had been the $6,000. I leant toward her second business venture, the one with the personalized gift baskets, the one she'd stopped mentioning by February. The first thing had been many things. But this was the thing that made the others impossible to keep swallowing. Under the bed, pushed against the wall, behind a basket of winter scarves, I kept a shoebox. Inside, 2 composition notebooks, a prepaid phone I'd charged quietly for 3 years using the outlet in my room, a card from an online bank with no physical branches, and a sealed envelope. I hadn't opened the envelope since I'd sealed it 2 years prior. I knew what was in it. What I needed now was the card. The financial advising office was on the 3rd floor of a building downtown, between a dentist and a tax preparer. I had made the appointment online, through an email address I'd created on the library's public terminal the previous spring. The advisor's name was Mr. Carver. He was younger than I expected. Mid-40s, unhurried, with the manner of someone who had stopped performing competence and simply had it. He didn't ask how I'd found him. He asked what I needed. "I have an account," I said. "That's been accumulating for 4 years under a name my family doesn't know about. I want to make sure it stays protected, legally, and I want to name a beneficiary." He looked at the card I slid across the desk, nodded once. "Who's the beneficiary?" "My granddaughter." I passed him a folded paper with her full name written in my best handwriting. "She's 15. I don't want her parents to have any access to it. Not before she's an adult, not after." He didn't raise his eyebrows. He wrote the name down. The balance by then was $294. We spent nearly 2 hours going through the structure. A revocable trust to start, for flexibility, while I finalized everything else. A pour-over provision so that anything remaining outside the trust would transfer cleanly. A trustee who was not a family member. The same attorney who had handled the building sale, the one with the office on Chestnut Street, and a fee structure I understood. When I left, I walked 4 blocks and bought a coffee I didn't really want, and sat by a window and watched the street for a while. I felt something I couldn't immediately name. Not relief, exactly. More like recognition. The way you feel when you finally see a photograph of a room you've been in so many times you'd stopped seeing it. The following week, I called my attorney. She was not surprised. When I explained what I needed, formal revocation of any financial permissions connected to my name within the household, clean separation of my affairs, she was quiet for a moment and said, "How long have you been sitting on this?" "A while," I said. "Come in Thursday." The gas account revocation took 1 certified letter. She sent it. I didn't have to explain anything at home. She also notified the 2 credit monitoring services where my name had appeared in connection with my son's household accounts. Clean lines, she called them. Clear edges. I also gave her a copy of the notebook. The notebook was a standard composition book, black and white cover, the kind I'd used for 2 decades of library cataloging. Every entry was neat and dated, written in blue ink. To $100, groceries, cleaning supplies, household toiletries. First 3 months. $4,300, my son's dental crown. His insurance covered 60%, $1,500, plane tickets for the mountain trip I was told there wasn't room for. $6,000, the gift basket venture. Advance. Never repaid, never mentioned again. $900, my granddaughter's winter coat. I asked trip to the aquarium, school photo package. I asked her later how the fish were. She described every single tank. $30 HV100 repair. "It's your house too, Mom." It was once. At the bottom of the last page, I had written the total. My attorney read it without comment. Then she looked up and said, "What do you want done with this?" "Keep the original with you," I said, "and prepare a copy to be delivered to my son when I say so." She understood the timing. The automatic payments were the next step. I brought my statements to the bank on a Tuesday. A teller helped me pull up every active payment linked to my card. There were 11. A streaming subscription my son used on the den television. a grocery delivery service my daughter-in-law had set up during the pandemic and kept running under my account because the discount was better. A software plan for a laptop that was not mine. The newly reinstated gas account still in my name, still drawing from my card without my knowledge. I canceled everyone. The teller printed a confirmation. I folded it into my purse and took the bus home. I felt no particular triumph. I felt the way you feel when you find the exact right place for something that's been sitting slightly wrong for years. My granddaughter found me in the kitchen that Thursday afternoon. She dropped her backpack by the door, the way she always does, and climbed up to sit on the counter the way she's done, since she was small enough for me to lift her there. She has her father's dark hair and a way of watching people that she absolutely did not inherit from him. "Grandma," she said, "are you okay?" "I'm working on something," I said. She ate an apple slice off the plate I set between us and thought about it. "Is it about the bills? I heard Mom on the phone with Aunt Myra last week saying some automatic things were getting canceled." I looked at her. What else did she say? That she was going to have to figure out which accounts were actually hers. She paused. I think she was annoyed. I said nothing. My granddaughter looked at me steadily. "I think you should do whatever you're doing," she said. "I don't know all of it, but I think you should." I reached into the drawer beside the stove and took out an envelope I'd placed there 2 days before. Her name on the front, written in my best hand. I set it between us. She looked at it, didn't touch it. "There's something in there for you," I said. "Not yet, but eventually, and I want you to know it's real." Her eyes moved from the envelope to my face. "How long is eventually?" "When you're somewhere that's yours." She picked the envelope up carefully, turned it over once, then set it back down like she was reading its weight without opening it. "Grandma," she said. Her voice had shifted slightly. "Are you leaving?" I looked at the window above the sink, at the yard past it, the rose bush by the front walk that nobody trims anymore. "I'm preparing," I said, "not to vanish, to live on my terms." She leaned across the counter and put her arms around me. She smelled like the school hallway and something citrus. I held her for a long time. She held back, the firm, full grip of someone who means it. When she let go, she wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her wrist, the way teenagers do when they don't want to be caught. She left without another word. I locked the envelope in the fire-proof box I kept beneath my sewing basket. That's where it would stay until I handed it to her myself. My son found the ledger printout on a Sunday. It had slipped from a folder when I was organizing. I'd left it face down on the printer without thinking. He was looking for something else. I was in the hallway when I heard him say my daughter-in-law's name in the particular tone that means he wants backup. He appeared in my doorway holding the paper with both hands. His expression wasn't anger. It was the look of someone whose map doesn't match the place they're standing. "What is this?" "My records," I said, "from the past 2 years. My daughter-in-law read it over his shoulder. The color in her face shifted. "You kept a ledger?" The edge in her voice was wrapped in something meant to sound like disbelief. "Of grocery runs?" "Of everything," I said, "including the gas account you opened in my name without asking." Silence. My son set the paper on the dresser. He ran his hand through his hair the way he did as a boy when he'd been caught in something and hadn't decided yet how to explain himself. "Mom, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to make us feel guilty?" "I'm trying to make you see what it cost." I kept my voice even, not because I expect to be repaid, because I kept track of it, and now you know it happened. "We gave you a place to live," he said. "We've been. I signed over this house for below market value," I said, "and then I helped pay for it. For nearly 2 years, I looked at him. I'm not angry, I'm telling you the facts." My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. I don't know what you expect us to do with this." "Nothing," I said. "I've already done everything necessary myself." My son looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means my affairs are in order. My accounts are separated from this household. I've made the arrangements I needed to make." I picked the ledger up from the dresser. "When the time comes, everything will be clear to everyone." My daughter-in-law's jaw tightened. "And what does that mean for us, exactly?" I looked at her for a moment. She is 49 years old, and she has never once asked how I slept. It means you won't need to think about my name on anything ever again, I said. Or my room. I closed the door. I heard her voice start up behind it, then my son's lower. I went to bed that night and slept without waking for the first time in months. I moved on a Wednesday morning in October. 2 men with a small moving company my attorney had recommended. Everything I owned fit into 7 boxes and 4 bags. The twin bed I left, the dresser with the loose drawer I left, the lamp I'd brought from my real bedroom I took, because I had bought it and I had a window now where it would be useful. My son was at the door when I came through with the last bag. His hands were in his pockets. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know," I said. "I want to." He stood there for a moment. He looked tired in a way I recognized from his father. When he was small, I used to reach back from the front seat of the car on long drives and rest my hand on his knee so he wouldn't startle when we stopped. "Mom," he said, "are you angry at me?" I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I'm just done arranging self around everyone else's needs." I kissed his cheek. He went very still. "I'll call you." The air outside was sharp and clear. The rose bush by the front walk was down to rust-colored stems. Someone would trim it someday, or they wouldn't. Either way, it was theirs now. The apartment is on the 2nd floor of a building 2 towns over. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen with a gas range that actually ignites, a window that faces east. The morning light is extraordinary. I wrote my granddaughter a letter that first night, sitting on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. A sandwich from the deli 2 blocks down opened beside me on the hardwood. I wrote on real paper with a pen I'd carried in my purse for so long I couldn't remember buying it. I didn't write much. I told her the envelope would come to her when she needed it, not before. I told her that some people would call her difficult for taking up the space she was owed, and the right response was patience, and then distance, and then the life that was hers to build. I told her she was already doing the hardest part just by paying attention. I signed it with my full name, not Grandma, not the name on the utility account, my name. It has been 3 weeks. I've stopped counting days. I go to the library on Tuesdays. I've volunteered at the front desk twice, just to have the smell of it back. Old carpet and the particular hush of rooms where everything has a place. I know where things belong. I always did. My granddaughter texts, small things. A photo of a painting, a question to book she found secondhand. A message last Thursday that said, "I opened the envelope just a little, just the corner. Then I sealed it back. I wanted to know it was real." I wrote back, "It's real. It'll be there when you're ready." She sent 1 word, "Good." That was enough. Here is what I want to say. To anyone reading this who recognizes the room, the quiet, the long patient habit of making yourself smaller so someone else can be more comfortable. You do not have to wait until they push you to the edge. You are allowed to make decisions slowly, in private, without asking anyone's permission. You are allowed to open an account in your own name, to walk into a lawyer's office, to cancel every automatic payment and watch the confirmation print out in a bank you chose for yourself, to pack 7 boxes, to move to an apartment with a window that faces east and a morning light so good it almost makes you laugh out loud. You are allowed to stop arranging yourself around people who have decided what you are. They may call it dramatic. They may call it selfish. They may say you changed, that you became someone they don't recognize. You didn't change. You only finally stopped apologizing for the version of yourself that kept the records, knew what things cost, and waited, with a great deal of patience, for the moment when it was time to begin. That moment may be now. And if it is, I hope you take it without looking back.